Okay, so we're starting with a recap of carbohydrates. So that includes monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Monosaccharides being the basic structure, things like glucose and its different structural forms, and then disaccharides and polysaccharides simply being chains of glucose. So if we start out with a reminder of what carbohydrates are and what we use them for. Some examples of this: the complex carbohydrates are things like breads and pastas, and more simplistic carbohydrates are simply sugars. So when you eat, say, a potato, you're eating a complex carbohydrate in the form of starch, and when you eat, say, a piece of candy, you're eating a simple mono or disaccharide in the form of just basic sugar. But saccharide technically stands for sugar anyways, so any sugar is a carbohydrate. The way your body uses it, we looked at in cellular respiration, your body breaks down glucose into energy. And so all carbohydrates, since they're made up of chains of glucose, can be broken back down into them to get energy. So the way we can look at this is your body's got a way of breaking down these long chains. So if we say each circle is glucose, a monosaccharide, then your body is going to slowly pop off one at a time. And as each one pops off, through cellular respiration, you get ATP from that one that pops off. When the next one pops off, maybe a few minutes later, same thing. Your body gets ATP from that next one. So when you eat complex carbohydrates, this is why your body gets energy for a long period of time. Just as a reminder, anytime you see anything ending in OSE or OS, it is a carbohydrate, specifically a sugar. So that's the chemical suffix for a sugar. All carbohydrates can be broken down, as I just showed, from a large chain or a disaccharide into constituent glucose molecules or monosaccharides. So just as a reminder, monosaccharide is C6H12O6. Typically we refer to that as glucose, but in different structural forms it could be fructose or galactose or ribose. And the difference between those is those 6 carbons form basically a ring with this little thing hanging off the side. And that's the main form of glucose. When we look at fructose, it forms a slightly different kind of ring. It looks kind of crooked. And different forms have just this one part that looks slightly different or forms a different line or a different chain. So it's just a structural difference. As a reminder, with disaccharides, the way you create a disaccharide is through dehydration synthesis. So the dehydration part is the loss of water. When these two molecules come together, so let's say we've got 2 glucose molecules coming together, the bonding site between them, off of one comes an hydroxide ion, and off of the other comes a hydrogen ion. Those two things together form water and allow this bonding site to come together, and now you've got a disaccharide. These can be broken back apart using enzymes to reverse the process, but that requires putting water back in. So this is why when your body digests things, it needs water. Examples of this are things like maltose, sucrose, and lactose, and we'll come back to lactose a little bit later when we look at enzymes. And then the last thing to talk about is polysaccharides, when we've got really long chains. So instead of just having 2, we get multiple, and they get these long chains all together. And you can see this in that orange review sheet that you got too. So this would be a polysaccharide. Sometimes it has a few hundred of these, although that's kind of an extreme case. And these are things like cellulose or starch, chitin, which is in insect wings. It's that nice hard structure. And in our bodies, we use glycogen to store basically energy in a small form as long polysaccharide chains. So that's the basic review of carbohydrates. I'm going to pause there, and then we'll come back to, in the next recording, we'll look at proteins.